Hey everybody, it's Heather from Crossline Radio, and today I wanted to take a minute and talk about a few scriptures that I don't often hear taught in church. If I do hear them read, I've heard them read in the completely wrong context. We're going to be talking about Romans 7, the very beginning of Romans 7. Most people know that Romans 7 it kind of describes the Christian struggle. And that's normally what most chapters in most people's Bibles say. But the beginning of this chapter, it begins to talk about being married to Christ. And what I hear a lot of preachers say is I hear them when they described Romans chapter 7, this is not a diatribe about divorce. Most people, when they're trying to preach or teach or talk to somebody about divorce being wrong, these are some of the scriptures that they use. That is incorrect and it's out of context. We need to have a proper understanding of what the word is saying. Paul, who is the author of Romans, he is not talking about divorce or really, truly, he's using marriage as an example, as a way to teach a principle. So let me go ahead and read. Verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he lives. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband. So then if, while her husband lives, she be married to another, she is called an adulteress. She shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is freed from the law. So she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. This isn't talking about polygamy. This is not talking about, he's using, a lot of people get married. So marriage would be a good example to give when you're trying to talk about our relationship with Christ as the church. So, know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. So, we all know, and in these days and times, I've seen so many women in a marriage that they kind of, we use the terminology wear the pants in the relationship, they're the boss. But the Bible clearly states that the man is the head of the woman. Adam was made first. Now, I know that this isn't about true marriage, but I'm giving the example because, and going into that because it's important to understand Christ is the head of the church. So when we're talking about how that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives, my husband and I have taught about, we've taught on this, we've taught on Romans 6, Romans 7, and Romans 8. Those are what we believe are probably some of the most important chapters for a Christian, a born-again Christian, to understand. We go verse by verse, and we have a CD set series for Romans 6, Romans 7, and Romans 8. We have them split up, and the reason we do that is because we go verse by verse so that every person has an opportunity to understand, truly understand. So we talk in detail about these. So if you don't have those and you haven't sat under the message of the cross, even if you have sat under the message of the cross, anybody that's truly hungry for the word, you should get these because they will bless you. They will enrich your understanding of what these chapters are speaking about. So what we talked about in Romans 6 in the series is we described the Christian, and I'm not going to go into it. You need to get the CDs if you want to know more, because we cover so much. Or you can call in or email in to questions on air It would be on air at crosslineradio.com, on air at crosslineradio.com. If you have questions that you'd like for us to cover, you can do that as well. But in Romans 6, we describe about the sin nature, and we talk about how at the fall in the garden with Adam and Eve, they entered into sin, which God had them in in total perfection and totally sinless. And when they sinned, when they disobeyed God, they fell. So did the entirety of humanity. In Adam's loins was the entire world, waiting to be spawned, so to speak. So every person after that was tainted. Their blood was tainted. Before they were perfect, they were in total unity with God. And what happened is the sin nature entered in. So where it was just a full indwelling of the Holy Spirit and total presence of God, we were separated from God because of sin. So we talked about that in Romans 6. Now Romans 7, he's talking about the law. Because of the sin nature being in us, now we are, the law has dominion over us. The Ten Commandments obviously always will have dominion as far as being a moral standard. But let me read verse 2. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he lives. The first husband is the law, because our first inclination as human beings, as sinful human beings, is to try to obey the law on our own, try to obey the Ten Commandments by ourselves. When Moses brought the law to the children of Israel, they cried and they wept because they realized that they had offended God's law, his standard of perfection. And they cried, and then they said, "What you say, we will do." And that is the problem with humanity, is we think that we can. He never actually told them, you can do this on your own. I almost wish that there would have been somebody with a brain that would have stood up and said, hey, that's not possible for us to do all of that. And when Jesus came and he began to give the Sermon on the Mount, he was telling people, you are not only to not have intimate relations with somebody else's, other than your spouse. If you even so much as look at a woman to lust, it's as though you've already committed adultery in your heart. If you have been angry with your brother and hated him, it's as though you've already killed him in your heart. See, sin is conceived in the heart of man and begins to come out. And so what he's doing is when he's giving the Sermon on the Mount, is he making it harder for people? No, he's raising the standard and to show that we could never meet God's standard of righteousness as on our own with a sinful nature that's in us. So the first husband that he's describing in Romans 7 is the law. Okay, the second husband is Christ. He's the one that saved us, okay? So, she's bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. The law is always going to be just and holy and good. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be a standard of righteousness. So, how could he die then? Paul tells you. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. Now, if the law is dead, like I just said, the Ten Commandments is always going to exist for thousands and thousands of years. It has been the standard of righteousness. It always will be. Because God is holy and it came from him. Now, so verse 3. So then if, while her husband lives, she is married to another, she shall be called an adulteress. We cannot abide in law and grace at the same time. You can't try to obey the law, meaning I can, or by the law, it could be any law that you make up. Any standard I'm not going to smoke cigarettes. Not smoking cigarettes is a good thing. They're harmful to our body and we shouldn't do it. But, and that's just an example. I'm not picking on anybody. That's just an example. But if you make up rules in order to thinking that by your rules, I know some people that they give to the homeless. And they've blessed me in my life when I have struggled financially. They've blessed us with food. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is awesome. But if they were to think that by doing that, they're earning something from God and that God is pleased with them somehow because they do that, that is a law and that's wrong. And God will not honor that. He's not pleased with anything that we do or anything we don't do. He's pleased with Christ. Behold, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. Okay? I guess this video is getting kind of long. I may need to have to break this up. Let me go ahead and do that. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to record another video kind of finishing up talking about this.